Okay, so we have our drums, we have our Rhodes, and we have our bass. Now, I want to add vocals now, okay? So I got my vocals. First and foremost, what I do before I create any audio track is I have to tell Cubase or Nuendo or whoever, I have to tell from which microphone and from which channel I am going to record into Nuendo on that specific track. So what I do is I hit F4 on my keyboard. F4 brings up the audio connection windows. And then in the audio connection windows, I go to inputs and I see that there's my regular stereo inputs, which is my analog to digital converter input. Okay. But what I want to do is I want to be even more specific. I want to go to add bus, and it's gonna bring up this window right here. Now, when you record vocals, most of the time you are going to record it from one microphone source. So you're gonna put this onto mono configuration because you're not using two microphones, you're using one microphone, and that is mono. And you're gonna use that configuration right here. You can select a stereo configuration if you're having two microphones recording your voice at the same time, like that usually what they do in studios. You have a 5.1 if you're recording with 6 microphones, all that. So you have a mono configuration, one track, and then you name it vocals. Now, in my computer right now, I am recording from microphone input 11 because my audio interface has an ungodly amount of of input tracks, and the one that I'm using it's microphone 11. So I'm going to select this and I'm going to go to microphone analog input 11. Now this is going to look very different according to what your audio interface looks like. I have several inputs because my audio interface is pretty large, but yours may have only 3 or only 2 or only 4 or whatever the amount of input instruments it is that you have available on your audio interface. And then once I created this, I close that. I go to my track list and I do add audio track. And right here, I go and select vocals, which is the one that I just did. By the way, select hardware inputs. Don't worry about this one. You worry about the connect to bus because that's the one that you created. So I select the vocal and I go stereo out and I name this my vocals. One count, add track. And now we have our vocal track. Now this, if I harm this, now you can hear I have a feedback because now the OBS is recording my voice and the voice that comes out of Nuendo at the same time. But that's how you make it sound. Now I'm going to turn it off. Now I'm going to explain the need for both of these buttons in just a second. Now that I have my setup that you can replicate on how many instruments you're going to need. Now let's record a little simple thing. I'm going to start with the Rhodes. Something like that, very simple. I'm gonna put a metronome on, and to put the metronome, I clicked on my touch screen, but the metronome is down here in this location right here. You have the metronome, or you can press C. If you press C on your keyboard, it should activate the metronome. So let's see what time are we in. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. And you can change that, of course, however you like. I'm going to set my locator right there so it doesn't bring me back all the way. To set the locator in a specific position, you press Control and then 1 and 2 together. Now, I did this. I created a macro key, which allows me to do it with one click of a button right there. Now, let's record this little piece. Okay, so I have my Rhodes selected. I made some mistakes. So when you make some mistakes, you want to click on the track, press Enter, or you double click on the track, and that brings up the piano roll or the editor window, which some people call it piano roll, some people call it editor window. It's the same exact thing. Now, what I want to do is I want to quantize this to make it sound that it's in tempo. Okay, I think if I stay in the eighth notes, should quantize it properly. All right, so let's listen to it. Okay, so I made a mistake. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna correct it. I'm gonna click the down arrow, up and down arrow. Will do that for me. And now I want to drag these ones over because they didn't play when they were supposed to. Now, what I did here is I let out the sustain pedal down here in on my foot, and what that caused is that this note right here doesn't sound after I bring back up the pedal. So how do I fix that? You have two ways. You either do that, and now this was going to sound as long as it can. The other way is to go and actually work on the specific notation. But how do you do that, right? Like, you open the editor and you most likely don't see anything. What you want to do is you want to click on the plus sign. You will see the available MIDI lanes, and you click on show used controllers, and what that does is going to show you the MIDI signals that went into that track. You see the note velocity right here, and the reason why there's only one, it's because they are all stacked. As you can see, there's notes underneath, so you can move them around and work on their specific velocity. And then you see any other MIDI input into the track. In this case, the sustain pedal, which is MIDI CC 64, and that's always 64. That's the sustain pedal MIDI, like standard MIDI signal number, whatever you want to call it. So as you can see here, I have this pedal on, pedal off, pedal on. What you want to do is you remove the off, and now the pedal, it's on all the time. And that C sharp right there will play no matter what. You know, it will always play. By the way, in order for you to see the names of the notes, you just have to zoom in into the notes enough so it will show you the names of the notes. So, all right, so I'm going to get out of the editor. Now, I made a little mistake there too because I am terrible at playing. Correct it. Let's make this a little more interesting. Now here, what happened here is that my hand is not wide enough to play a C sharp, G sharp, and then an F. So I can't reach that F. So what I'm gonna do is, what I did is I played the chord, and then I do this. I arpeggiate it, and then when I do what I do there, I bring this back, I drag it, and I drag this back. That way, this sounds like I'm playing the entire chord with one hand. And it sounds just like, you know, what it should sound if you're going for that kind of sound, of course. You can leave it arpeggiated if you like that. Now, and by the way, this big purple button that you see right here, that is the editor window that pops up and down, and it works. If you select a specific track, it will highlight that track. If you don't select a specific track, it will highlight the entire project, just like that. Perfect. Okay, so let's put some bass on this. Actually, let's figure out some drums first. Let's do that. Okay, Okay, so I actually don't like the rim shot right there. I'm gonna go for a full snare. Okay, here's an interesting thing to notice. As you can see, the Rhodes on the second chord of the phrase, bah, it starts just one movement before the downbeat. It starts in an upbeat. It doesn't actually fall on the downbeat. So if it fell on the downbeat, it would sound like this. Okay, which is boring. But what we did is we make it slightly anticipate it. Now, what I want is I want the kick to emphasize that, because the bass is going to emphasize that too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-record the drums. I could modify it in the MIDI roll, but this is a modification that makes the entire feel of the drums different. So I'm going to do that instead. Okay, so as you can see now, that makes a lot more sense. The drums is following the groove of the Rhodes, and this makes much more sense than anything else. So now I have pressed Control A to highlight everything in that track, and then I pressed Q, the Q button up here, to hard to quantize everything. So now everything should line up perfectly. Now I can go in with my electric bass. So what I noticed by playing the bass now is that there are notes that I would like the bass and the kick drum to do at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-record the bass in a more clean way, and then I'm going to re-record the drums so that it lines up with the bass. Okay, the bass is dancing a lot in between octaves and things like that, so that's kind of almost like a bass player would do. Now I have my bass line. Okay, I need to remove this right here. We don't need that one. I'm going to quantize it, and I'm going to remove the metronome. Okay, perfect. Now I have my arrangement set up. Now I have my bass, I have my keyboards, and I have my drums. Now I'm going to do my vocals, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the very basics of how I would go about mixing this music to make it sound a little better. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually not going to activate the monitoring, because now I sound like a radio. But I am going to just keep it in record. So this is arming the track. Record enable. You can see that. So what arming the track means is basically it's telling the DAW that now when I press record, I wish to record this. Okay? Now this is recording my voice. Now what I want is just to sing on top of this, just to give you an idea. I'm not a singer. I suck at singing, and I haven't made lyrics for this song, so I'm just gonna just say something on this song, right? I went to the grocery store. I bought some bread, some eggs, and some frozen pizza.